I want to thank you for spending some time with me today, and actually through the video camera you'll be speaking to about 50 additional students in the Executive MBA program at the University of New Mexico.
Good.
I'm a member in a group that's giving a presentation in my economics class on the gold standard, and when I started to do some initial research into the gold standard, I recall reading your book called the Ron Paul Money Book, which I believe was published around '91, so it's a relatively new book.
Right.
And when I was reading it, I thought, why not try to talk to the author? So I called you up the other day, and you were very nice about saying, come on down and doing this interview. So I want to thank you again. And as we get started, I'd like, if you could, give us, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and your experience. Thank you.
Just as an aside about the book that you referred to, although that book was put together in the early 1990s, it has materials from years before that too,
okay.
Like the minority views from the Gold Commission report that would have been done about 10 years earlier. Anyway, I'm a physician here in Lake Jackson. I deliver babies for a living, but I also do an investment letter. It's called the Ron Paul Survival Report, and I put that out on a monthly basis.
I've heard of that.
Which is a gold-oriented newsletter, but it's also expressing concern about surviving in this age of big government, where there's a lot of taxes, a lot of regulations, and attacks on our personal liberties. I was concerned about this many years ago. Even in 1974, I had a lot of concern about this, and advocated some of the things that they're talking about right now, like balanced budget amendments and term limitations. And in order to get it off my chest, I decided to run for Congress. My wife expressed a little bit of concern about this because she was afraid I might win. But I guaranteed her that wouldn't be possible.
Okay.
Because I was going to be advocating slashing the budget.
Right.
But anyway, it turned out that I did win, and I was in Congress for 4 terms.
What year was that?
I went in '76 and left at the end of '84.
Okay.
And it was during this time, of course, we had a major financial crisis in '79 and '80, when the dollar was very, very weak, and people panicked, and gold went up to over $800 an ounce.
I remember.
My initial interest in economics came in the late '60s, or even during the '60s, when I was starting to read proponents of gold saying, you know, we're not going to be able to maintain this gold standard at $35 an ounce because we're printing too much paper. And this sort of fascinated me, but I watched it for about 10 years and nothing happened. The gold stayed at $35 an ounce.
Okay.
But finally, the advocates, the free market people, the gold standard people, proved to be correct, because in 1971, Bretton Woods broke down.
Right.
And that $35 an ounce went out the door, and gold started going up, and that's when I got more interested in politics. And by 1976, you know, I was involved and ran. But the money issue was the issue I was interested in. But to me, the money issue is important, not because money per se is crucial, but the money issue is very closely intertwined with the concept of big government.
Yes.
You get to a point where if the people and the Congress perpetuates a system of big government, whether it's welfare here at home or warfare overseas, there's a limit to what we can afford. Well, the inflation, that is the creation of new money and credit, is the vehicle whereby they finance this, and they get away with it, and the ill effects aren't felt immediately. Where if you would immediately tax people for welfare and pay for the whole thing, or immediately tax people and pay for all the warfare and all the international activities going on, if we had to pay on the line, we'd put a stop to it. But inflation is a trick. Inflation is a trick, and it's exactly like counterfeit.
You mentioned the Bretton Woods Agreement in '71. Why did that break down? What was going on? Why did we get off the more formal gold standard?
Well, it wasn't a good gold standard. It was established in 1945, and it was called a gold exchange standard. You did not exchange gold. The currencies weren't backed by gold, but the dollar was theoretically backed by gold at $35 an ounce. But everybody said, well, after the war, you know, we had most of the gold. We had more than 700 million ounces of gold. Our dollar was powerful. Our economy was powerful. And it was unbelievable that we'd ever squander it away. So instead of saying, well, let's not go with the old-fashioned way of exchanging gold and defining our currencies in terms of gold, we'll just say the dollar's as good as gold.
Okay.
And as long as we have a lot of dollars out there, we'll hold dollars, and people will be satisfied. But the laws of economics would not permit this, because all through the 50s and the 60s we kept running the printing presses, creating money and credit, subsidizing everybody and giving away foreign aid, buying goods from overseas. Our dollars would go over, but even today those dollars don't come home immediately. So we get a free ride. We create money. We buy things overseas, or we meddle in the affairs of other nations through foreign aid, and those dollars are kept and held in the central banks over there, which is good for us on the short run, but bad on the long run, because eventually they recognize, boy, there's a lot of dollars over here. And that's what happened in the 60s. They kept saying there's a lot of dollars over here. And I can remember very clearly when de Gaulle, who was a gold standard person, said, we're getting too many dollars. And he started repatriating the dollars.
Okay.
And he made the Americans furious. But we were the ones at fault, because we printed the money. And we were buying all these things with this good money, because the market didn't recognize that the dollar had lost its value.
Okay.
So it takes a while to dilute and go through the system, and it's even more delayed if central bankers are willing to hold it. But anyway, the money started coming back in. In order to try to continue the fraud, our people in Congress and in the administration, especially Johnson, kept saying, and even Kennedy, they kept saying, our dollar's as good as gold. You send back $35 and we'll give you an ounce of gold.
Okay.
They gave away 500 million ounces of gold at $35 an ounce. Took us down to about 283 million ounces that we still hold. And finally they recognized, and they said, this is a farce. We printed so much paper, and we know there's too much paper in relationship to gold, therefore the price of gold has to be higher in terms of dollars.
Sure. That's
when Nixon, who was in office in 1971, said, within a year, we're not going to have an ounce of gold left.
Okay.
So he finally said, we cut it off. That was the official announcement that our dollar was no longer a commodity standard, and that was the end of even the pretense that we had a gold standard.
You have, you've already kind of talked about this a little bit, but to answer very specifically, why do we have a gold standard? Why would you want a gold standard? And can you kind of summarize that? And I'm hearing that, but well, and I've heard you in your book. You say it's honest money.
Yeah, it's honest money, and it's not so much that I want a gold standard. It's that economic laws and the rules that have developed over centuries has mandated that there be a commodity standard of money, and gold was the most convenient commodity for money. So it has evolved, it has developed, and it is an outcome of the marketplace. If we can think of times when we didn't have governments managing the money, that if you and I and some others were on an island when we were each working, we would not all of a sudden decide that pieces of paper were money. If you were producing wheat and I was producing corn, we'd start trading commodities. And you'd have to have real value for real value. It just turned out that the universal commodity that people will seek out and use and trade and can divide and carry and make use of it was gold. So over 6,000 years, gold and silver became natural monies, because people were willing to take them. They knew what they were valuable, they liked them, they'd make jewelry out of them, and it fit all the components of what money has to be. So that's why gold is money, not because I want it to be money. But we also know that there are tremendous economic benefits from commodity money, and we know of all the disadvantages of paper money.
I think you make the point in your book that when the boat people left Vietnam, they didn't take paper money with them, they took gold.
There's no way that you can get out with paper money in a crisis. You go back to the real stuff. And that's what will eventually happen here. We haven't quite seen it in recent years, but certainly when they were panicking in 79 and 80, people were